Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very, very, very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight on my revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers, he was the last worthwhile thing to read on public address. Devonport militia leader, militant cyclist and pithy tweeter, David Slack. She's the most powerful female politician in the country whose hobbies include environmentalism, Westism and fighting evil. The Deputy Mayor of the Auckland Super City and high-ranking Jedi Knight, Mrs. Call It Like It Is, Penny Holtz. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1, how was Israeli spies possibly hacking into our police database in the wake of the Christchurch earthquake, not in the national interest? Issue 2, Close Up apologise for copying US media, but shouldn't they apologise for so much more? Is public broadcasting dead in the month TVNZ has its charter officially removed? Issue 3 tonight, National select John Banks' biographer as their candidate against John Banks in Epsom. Will the good people of Epsom see through such political incest? And we'll end the show on a final word. But let's kick things off with issue 1. So there was an Israeli intelligence unit harvesting New Zealand passports caught up in the Christchurch earthquake. The Israeli PM calls John Key 4 times. The Israelis are whisked away, and while a Mossad cleanup team is sent in, they exploit the opportunity by attempting to hack into the police national intelligence computer, and our SAS caught them illegally in the red zone. David, how is this not in the public interest? I'm a member of the public, and I'm very bloody interested.
Well, maybe it's because John Key just doesn't like reading spy stories as much as the rest of us.
Exactly.
I think the thing here is that I don't think he's very interested in this stuff, I don't think he likes to play in a game he doesn't think he can win. And really, that's what was going on here. We don't know for sure. It certainly looks pretty murky, and you know, if I were working on a hunch, I would be more suspicious than not about all of that.
Especially with our history, let's be honest. I mean,
right.
They have been here harvesting New Zealand passports in the past, haven't they?
That's right, and it turns out that our passports are the good stuff.
That's right. Everyone likes them. Everyone wants them.
Excuse me, but and the thing that really strikes me about this is how unusual it is for people to buy a fare out on the day, within 12 hours of departure, because backpackers don't tend to have that much money in their kick for that kind of thing.
Well, they don't tend to have 5 passports on them either, do they?
Well, the number of passports thing seems to have been squared away, but you know, maybe that's just been careful work in walking the thing backwards. But the nub of it is what I said a moment ago, that I don't think John Key is much interested in playing in games he can't win. He seems to, you look at him on the road in America right now, he just gets so excited about deals, loves the deals.
Yeah.
But something like foreign affairs, in all of its nuances and shadings, seems to be something that leaves him cold. And it seems to me that, notwithstanding he does seem to like getting in the chopper, I don't think he's very interested in the job he has as the minister in charge of the SIS.
He talks about, which is the problem, because he is in charge of the SIS.
Yes, it does. Yeah. That's right. And international relations is important.
Yes.
And sure, we can be a little fanciful about what we can do on the world stage, but the flip of that is we were actually quite influential in how the UN got established.
That's right.
And they've been. And in nuclear testing and
Helen will be the first
apartheid.
Female leader of the UN.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
So actually, you can be a significant influence on the direction of world affairs if you want to be.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't seem to be interested in this stuff.
Penny, is it good enough for the PM to just declare a national interest and expect us to accept that? I mean, there have been a couple of times in the Super City's brief history where land deals have been mentioned in council meetings that are so top secret you aren't even allowed to acknowledge they exist. Where does the public's right to know trump the unpleasantness of the truth exposed? As a leader, where would you put that line?
I'd hardly put an Israeli spy issue alongside purchasing a small piece of land for a car park, but I think the public's right to know is paramount, but protecting the public purse is also important. And the only time we do land deals behind closed doors are when we're actually negotiating with a landowner. We're trying to keep the price down. So, a bit of a reality check. If you're going into some tough negotiations on land purchase, you aren't going to give your the person you're buying it from an opportunity to sit in at a public meeting while you discuss how much money you're going to make available.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's the reason for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and when you're doing trade-offs, I suppose, as you often are in leadership, you are having to make difficult choices. And it is true that in issues of national security, there is always going to be this kind of tension. But I think here, he doesn't really look at the tension at all. He just defaults to saying, "Oh, don't want to talk about it. Not
National,
interested."
David, National have decided to dump the concept of an independent foreign policy in favour of our old alliances with America and Israel. Is that what's muting John Key's response to this?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it. Like like I was saying, I don't think he's very interested in being an active agent in international affairs. He assesses where the ranking is in the international order, and he thinks, well, I'm just the guy who peels the oranges for this. I'm not very interested, so I'll just take my bidding. I'll do what I think is going to create the least dust, and off we'll go. And I've heard it said that the briefing meetings that you have with Foreign Affairs, in the case of both Key and McCulley, they seem to be interested in engaging for a few minutes, but there's really not much substance there because neither of them are actually
Peter
engaged
Sharples
in the
has said that.
portfolio.
Peter Sharples has said he's trying to discuss important issues of treaty philosophy. He's sort of there for 30 seconds and then just starts talking to children. What bit of zoning they're going on? Penny, as a Gen Xer, my concept of an independent foreign policy was deeply influenced by David Longy. What do you think New Zealanders want? Do we want to stand on the strength of our convictions on the global stage, or do we want to keep America and Israel happy? What is it that we really want?
You know, the depressing thing, just listening to David, is I realise that probably as a nation we're not absolutely sure because of the appalling lack of objective reporting and in-depth reporting in our media. It becomes really hard for us to sort of unpack what the real issues are. What I'd be worried about is if we defaulted to, Israel bad because we happen to be out of sorts with America, therefore they're joined at the hip, therefore we're grumpy with Israel. You can't reduce foreign policy down to those bite-sized chunks. But we're living in a bite-sized chunks media world, and in the same way that maybe some of our politicians don't do foreign policy well, I don't think we do as a nation. I think probably our David Longy nuclear stance was the proudest independent moment of New Zealand's sort of foreign policy life. But I think it's going to be a long time before we see that again, and before we see the likes of Helen Clark, who could come onto Morning Report at 5:45, 6 o'clock, utterly briefed and across an issue that happened 2 hours ago in France. So I think we really do need to require more in-depth understanding of these issues.
Yeah, you make a good point there. It was observable once again that in this particular issue, John Key hadn't been briefed. He didn't have his position ready, and he always looks somewhat deer in the headlight when that.
He does get that look going, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Question for both of you: if we can arrest a supposed looter with Asperger's and lock him up for 11 days and deny him diversion, how can we let this Mossad clean team waltz off scot-free after they were caught in the red zone? I mean, for a New Zealander with Asperger's syndrome, he's locked up for 11 days and denied diversion. You catch a Mossad team in the red zone, should we give you a taxi chit?
I'm tempted to say they didn't get a chance to beat them up, but I'm going to get myself in trouble if I do. So I didn't say that, okay?
There is a double standard.
Clearly.
There is, and I think that was one of the most tragic sights of the, I was going to say of the earthquake. Of course it wasn't, but of the police side of the earthquake. I think it was an overreaction to that outpouring of venom towards anyone who dared loot, and that poor, probably rather lovely young man was caught right in the middle of it, and he was a victim of a kind of a tidal wave of testosterone around the whole issue.
That's true.
Heartbreaking.
Question to both of you: who wins, who loses in a spy story like this? The Southland Times done a wonderful job, haven't they? My God.
Yep, Fred Tullett wins plenty out of this,
he certainly
although
does.
he gets a few brickbats for not perhaps checking his sources as thoroughly as he could have, but that's news.
Yep.
I think we all win by being a little better informed about the nature of realpolitik and the way our government is playing it out. it's just dispiriting that what we learn is not necessarily encouraging.
No, it's not. Who wins, who loses?
Yeah, I agree that that's a win. I have to say, however, as someone who's spent quite a lot of time in the Jewish community, I'm concerned by the fact that people don't understand the difference between the Jewish community and Israeli politics. And I would be concerned about the impact on our Jewish community, who are an important and loved part of our community.
Yeah, that's an important point.
True.
Issue 2. Auckland-based current affairs show Close Up apologised this week for copying a story from ABC News. In the month that the public charter was killed off, is public broadcasting dead in New Zealand? David, before Close Up apologised for copying ABC, shouldn't they apologise for so much more? The pointless stories on sick penguins, Shrek the sheep, and more attention spent on the life and death of a psychic octopus than any actual scrutiny of government policy last year.
Well,
I did a time check. They actually did. They spent more time on the psychic octopus.
the answer is yes. I mean, this is essentially apologising only for knocking over a road sign in Warsaw. There really is an awful lot that's been done wrong here. I'm not saying they should be taken to Nuremberg, but I do think that they have taken journalism off on a lamentable course, and I don't know when, if ever, they will try and bring it back from there. But it really has trivialised and introduced emotion in the place of reason to any number of stories you care to nominate.
Penny, is it Close Up a victim of the 24-hour news cycle? That the cutbacks mean less investigation and more regurgitation. Are you impressed with the quality of New Zealand current affairs?
It's what we were saying before, you know, dear Mark Sainsbury, sort of part psychic octopus, part happy feet. But, you know, where I don't necessarily blame our journalists. You know, when you talk to them, they share the frustration at the lack of time to get their teeth into doing what they have a passion to do. But, you know, you've talked on the removal of the charter. I just think, there goes objectivity, bravery and investigation and, you know, informing a nation in a way that we need to be informed. It worries the hell out of me.
David, MediaWorks were given a cosy loan of $43 million, so they're paid up members of the National Party until the election. Can we hope that public broadcasting will hold the powerful to account?
I don't know if bias is the problem so much as exactly what Penny just identified, the sheer lack of time to do a story properly. Nobody's out there actually doing rounds or talking to people. They're mostly mute recipients of the press release, the announcement, the whatever the news that somebody has decided they want to promote will be. That's what's really missing. And you know, for those of us who can remember long, hour-long TV docos that did current affairs and extended interviews with the ministers who actually turned up and had their feet held to the flame.
Foreign correspondent used to be great on TV1.
All of that, you know, it's there's not a lot to feel cheered about here.
Penny, is public broadcasting important when we have the E channel? I mean, won't people just want to switch to entertainment over a depressing sense of hopelessness when important issues are discussed? You know how complex stuff is. If you're sitting at home and you go, what am I going to watch? Am I going to watch an hour of going, my God, South Auckland's really screwed? I know. Or I'm going to watch the latest top 10 from the E channel. What am I going to watch?
I know. I miss the Playboy Mansion. But
well, so does he. So does he. Well, he missed it in the 70s, I think.
But at the risk of, you know, being incredibly depressing, I grew up in a country growing up in South Africa with completely closed media. Media owned everyone's thoughts. They controlled what, you know, what was put out there to the community. And in the absence of good, robust media, bad things happen. You know, we end up with an endless diet of happy feet, whilst in the background, you know, appalling decisions are being made around funding that no one is able to really unpack and explain in a sensible way to our community.
Question to both of you: will National privatise TVNZ post the election?
Oh yeah, I think if they can find a buyer.
Right. You think they'll privatise TVNZ?
Rupert Murdoch might be.
Well, that's actually my next question. Do you think it will be Rupert Murdoch? Because he's got the cash with the B-Sky B deal turned down. Tell me they wouldn't sell it to Rupert. Tell me they wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. Do you know the very first newspaper he bought when he became an internationalist was the Dominion in Wellington?
My God, really?
So there might be a sentimental kind of a circularity to it for him.
Who wins, who loses by close-up being so crap? Your thoughts?
Oh, I think we all lose, but I think mostly the journalists lose the chance to do, the work of their passion, and
Sure.
I feel sorry about that.
Who wins, who loses?
We're all the poorer. The only people who win is the E channel.
Yeah.
Thank you, panel. Moving on with issue 3 tonight. National select John Banks' biographer is their candidate against John Banks in Epsom. Will the good people of Epsom see through such political incest? David, the term mutual admiration would need to be expanded to ass-kisser to sum up this relationship, wouldn't it?
Well, I was thinking Jeeves and Worcester, actually.
Oh, really? You want to go that far?
Well, I won't go too far with that because I actually think I might make a column out of it. But anyway, so somebody was at that at the national candidate selection meeting and told me something quite interesting, which was that they observed that there is a real antipathy towards John Banks, especially because he's embracing this tub-thumping treaty line of the ACT Party, and saying that's not the kind of way your Epsom voter thinks, and they'll probably go and tactically vote for ACT for anyway, for for Banks, but they'll be doing it holding their nose.
Really?
Was his impression.
So they don't like his divisiveness. They don't like his old race baiting nonsense.
It's more of that kind of what would you say, Christine Fletcher kind of progressive national mood, or Doug Graham. You think of the people that electorate has had in the past. That's right. Okay. Yeah, and it would be overstating it to call it noblesse oblige, but it's somewhere along that way where you've got people who are still their politics is to the right, but they're not knuckle-dragging cretins, and they certainly don't respond to robo-candidate, who I think is on to about his third election past when he was a viable one. And I speak, of course, of John Banks.
Penny, Paul Goldsmith was the Auckland City Councillor, of course, who in 2008 pushed for Parliament to grant police more powers to force the homeless from Queen Street, something currently being done by this $20,000 contract to a private security company to sweep the homeless away for the World Cup tourists. Did the new super city inherit a little piece of Goldsmith's spite for Auckland's homeless when they took over?
Yeah, I got asked about this yesterday, and just having got back from overseas, my understanding of what we were doing during Rugby World Cup was working with the City Mission to try and find, temporary accommodation or homes and support for the homeless in Queen Street. The other issue is there's two sides to the story. There's also the vulnerability of our homeless when there's an influx of visitors who don't necessarily understand how our city works. So the last thing that I'd like to see is a sort of a ethnic cleansing of homeless people from the city centres. We've seen happen in other areas when the Olympic Games happen. I wouldn't like to think this is happening. Some of us need to make sure that it isn't happening, but I would just like to echo what David was saying before about people's feelings about John Banks. It's extraordinary to see him in the last few days suddenly, back out there with the his talk of the losers of the Labour Party. I think, as you say quite rightly, the good people of Epsom are a little bit past that kind of rhetoric.
Question to both of you. Why is David Parker from Labour running in Epsom? What does David know about candidate John Banks that the rest of us don't know?
Oh, I don't think it's scandal mongering so much as...
I'm scandal mongering.
so much as drawing people's attention to the cosy way this deal is being done. And, it is clear that Nationals thinking is they want to get every single party vote they can from that electorate, and ACT want to get every candidate vote they can from that electorate, and electorate vote from that electorate. And in those terms, it does make sense to put somebody like Goldsmith in there, because he will say all of the nice, smooth, soothing things. He'll have all of the talking points just right, and saying National will do this and this and this. But there's still a kind of high-handed disregard for voters when you start gaming it like that. That's what that's the obvious thing for Parker to draw attention to, and I have no doubt he will draw attention to it assiduously, because, you know, he's experienced.
Well,
and
especially in Epsom, I mean,
Yeah.
they're hardly a bunch of, you know, politically naive members of
That's
the
right.
public. You know,
they
Yeah,
did
well,
not
that's
just
right.
fall off the
they would
turnip
be
truck.
our smartest and astute bunch of voters, you know, in the Auckland area, and I just can't see them falling for that kind of manipulation. It's so out there.
Blatant and
Yeah.
obvious, isn't it? And also, I mean, let's be honest, and I hate to say this, but Rodney does have a certain amount of charm, doesn't
Oh,
he? Bless
now
it,
look,
but he does,
I feel
doesn't
the
he?
need to poke my eyes out with a sharp instrument, but I felt myself. I can't believe
Yep.
it. My husband saw me sort of leaning forward the last time I was watching him on television, and he said, "Don't even say it." And I started to say,
Yep.
actually, maybe he
I
wasn't
know.
that bad. And
I know, I
this is
know.
on television.
Yep.
I'm going to have to boil my head in a bucket for that. But you know, there you go.
But he has charm, doesn't he? And that's
I-
the reason why
I've
he's got
seen-
a 12,000
Yeah.
bloody
You
majority,
bet.
isn't it?
I've seen him work a meeting better than just about any politician.
Now, John Banks doesn't have that charm, does he?
Oh,
Banks
God, no.
doesn't have the charm of Hyde.
Well, he doesn't know how to. Banks doesn't know how to connect, and he doesn't really have a grasp of the ideas, or he can't see what it is the person in the room is saying, and then be able to take it and respond it
Right,
and apply it
right.
to his point of view.
Yeah.
Which is what you expect
Yeah.
of a politician.
2-second Rodney Hyde-Lovin, the thing that he
Yep.
does so well and the thing that is appealing, he kind of knows he's a bit of a bastard. And
Yeah, and
he plays,
Mm.
that,
that.
and you have to hand it to him. That is clever stuff, and it also has its own charm. I'm never going to say that again.
Both of you, after the race baiting adverts and Act's racist meltdown last weekend, do the good people of Epsom feel like they're getting a raw deal by putting up with John Banks' biographer as a candidate? Or are the good people of Epsom so redneck that an arsonist who sets fires to Marais could get elected there? I mean,
No,
what's the toss up here?
No, like I said, you know, there is a distaste for the tub thumping, and I don't think that that's going to work well for Banks. But
Because they don't like being thought of
Yeah.
as a redneck electorate, do they?
But having said all that, you know, there is that they will, I think, end up playing the larger game and saying, well, here's what the right coalition require.
What if they
and-
don't think National will need a coalition partner? What
Yeah.
happens there? I mean, we've been talking about how they will tactically vote, and the Epsom voters are a smart bunch, and they look to tactically vote. But if they don't think that ACT's going to be necessary to the actual equation,
there's more downside to doing that than not. I
Right.
think that's the point. So I
Right.
think it'll be a safe. It's a safety vote that says, just in case,
right?
here's your potential for multiple bang for your buck.
Right.
And,
Who wins, who loses by John Banks' biographer running against him?
I would hope that, as David has said, that the good people of Epsom see through that and they double back on what they're being given, and they quite sensibly will, you know, maybe just support National and leave ACT out of the picture altogether. So maybe we might win by this overly complicated approach.
Yeah,
and if that happens, we all win. To anticipate your question.
Let's wrap the show with last word, David. Your last word this week.
My last word is a number, 36%. I offer it because that is the percentage of people who ride a bike each day in Copenhagen. Even in winter, we're in the snow. I rode up here today in a little bit of rain.
Yeah.
But 40 years ago, Copenhagen was no different a city from Auckland. And that's what they've got now. And each time you see a fight about Dominion Road or about the way the bus lanes are being prosecuted, just bear in mind that unless you change things a bit,
Yeah.
you're not going to change things at all.
Absolutely. And isn't it shocking when you think of that? 36%, was it? 36%? When you look at Auckland, only 7% of Aucklanders commute daily.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just insane, isn't it?
The one thing that I'm putting my hope in the end is $4 a litre for petrol, because that is sure as hell will
that's
sort
the
it
way it's
out.
going to do it. Penny, your last word this week is?
Two quick things,
Yep.
but a 26% increase in train use. in
Great.
Yeah.
June
Great.
to June, which
Great.
is just fantastic.
Right. If
My
only they
last-
could run on time now.
And they do catch a train sometime. They're fantastic. The ones out west like clockwork.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Mussolini could not have done better. But the quick point I wanted to make is youth unemployment. We are
Yeah,
just
19.3%, 19.3%.
We are just falling behind the rest of the world, and I think two things. Number one, we're leading a project on council to get involved absolutely in the middle of all of this. And the second thing is my huge concern that the cuts that are being made to things, whether it's from Play Centre through to Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, through to health initiatives for young people, these all direct our young people into a place that doesn't make it easy for them to get employment, doesn't make it safe for them to explore employment options, and doesn't lead to good education outcomes. And we simply need to focus back as a country on our young people, getting them into jobs. That's going to grow our economy more than all the agreements with China and whatever else we're doing. We've got to sort it out internally first.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Penny. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. Being the head of the SIS, Key should have known all about the Israelis in Christchurch, and if evidence of spying existed, then of course he wouldn't tell the public. National have dumped having any independent foreign policy and have made us lapdogs to American and Israeli interests. Let's not forget John Key was one of the last Western leaders to continue to support the Egyptian dictator, even when Egyptians were on the streets dying for the right for democracy in their own country. And New Zealand dutifully follows American and Israel's lead when it comes to our diplomats walking out of UN speeches. Key has sold our independence down the river and can hardly point out our allies he's selected are in fact constantly attempting to rob us of our identities. It would be making that embassy he gave them look like an intelligence outpost, forever acting as Israel's Eye of Mordor. Who wants that public perception? Not John Key. So, shh. Let's just forget that our allies tried to hack our police national intelligence computers, shall we? It's a bit like trying to overlook your best mate hitting on your wife while you're at work, though, isn't it? We've finally managed to find one thing that matches John Key's vacant aspiration, his optimistic denial. Let's hope this issue dies down quickly so we can scrutinise the bullshit free trade deal with America that Key is trying to sign, which will molest our economic sovereignty and allow US corporations to sue the New Zealand government in overseas tribunals we have no power in. It's what John Key does when he's feeling aspirational that makes me nervous. His denial is just amusing. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded news citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.